I want you all to meet someone. Her name is Sara. Before the day that changed everything, her life was a beautiful, simple song. She lived in a small town, the kind of place where everyone knows your name and waves as you walk by. Sara was a baker. Not just any baker, but a true artist. Her little shop, The Morning Rise, was the heart of her community. It was a place filled with warmth, laughter, and the most delicious cinnamon rolls you have ever tasted. She had a loving husband, Mark, a high school history teacher. They had dreams. Simple, heartfelt dreams. They were saving up to buy a little house with a big garden, a place where they could plant tomatoes and watch their future children play. It was a Tuesday, a completely ordinary Tuesday in the middle of May. Sara had just finished a large order for a local wedding, her fingers moving with the familiar grace of her craft. Mark had called her just an hour before, his voice full of excitement. He had found the perfect house, the one with the big garden they had dreamed of. Those were the last words she ever heard him speak. The news came in pieces, delivered by a police officer with a kind but solemn face. There had been an accident, a car crash on the highway just outside of town. Sara stood there in her flour-dusted apron and felt the world tilt on its axis. Mark was gone, just like that. The days that followed were a blur of deep, unrelenting sorrow. Getting out of bed felt like climbing a mountain. The bakery, The Morning Rise, remained closed, its windows dark and its shelves empty. Her grief was a physical presence, a heavy cloak she couldn't take off. It was in the tightness in her chest, the ache in her throat that made it hard to speak. They couldn't understand the depth of her loss, the profound loneliness of waking up to an empty space beside her in the bed. She would trace the photos on the mantelpiece, her fingers lingering on Mark's smiling face. Each memory was a double-edged sword. She was adrift in an ocean of sorrow, with no land in sight, and she had no idea how or if she would ever find her way back to shore. Then one afternoon, as she was listlessly sorting through a box of Mark's old things, her fingers brushed against a small, worn leather journal. She almost put it back, the pain of seeing his familiar handwriting too much to bear. But something made her pause. Something compelled her to open it. Mark wrote not just about historical events, but about the people behind them. He wrote about their resilience, their courage in the face of unimaginable hardship. He had underlined a quote, "We are not defined by what breaks us, but by how we choose to rise after we have been broken." Hope is not the absence of suffering. Hope is the courage to face the suffering. It's lighting a candle instead of cursing the darkness. That night, for the first time in a long time, Sara saw that single tiny flame. The next morning, Sara woke up with a new, albeit heavy, sense of purpose. Today, she would do one thing, just one. The key felt heavy in her hand as she stood before the dusty glass door of The Morning Rise. So she walked over to the windows, and one by one, she began to clean them. With each swipe of the cloth, she was letting a little more light into the darkness. She reached out and touched the familiar fabric, the one her grandmother had given her. It wasn't just a symbol of her old life, it was a symbol of her resilience. As she kneaded the dough, something incredible began to happen. She wasn't just mixing flour and water, she was working through her pain, pouring her sorrow, and that tiny flickering hope into the dough. And as the scent of baking bread began to fill the air, it smelled like more than just bread. It smelled like life. It smelled like a new beginning. Reopening the bakery was not a fairy tale ending. It was the beginning of a new, difficult chapter. She created a new recipe, a special bread made with rosemary for remembrance, and called it Mark's Loaf. Sharing it became a way to keep his spirit alive. The bakery transformed. It was no longer just a place of simple happiness. It became a sanctuary of resilience, where people felt safe to share their own stories of loss and hope. Sara, in her own quiet way, became a beacon for others. She showed everyone that it was possible to carry immense sorrow and immense strength at the same time. She finally bought a little house and planted a garden. She planted tomatoes just as they had dreamed, and rosemary. Every time she worked in the soil, she felt him there with her. Whatever you are facing, whatever mountain seems too high to climb, remember Sara. Never give up on the possibility of a new sunrise. Your story is not over. You have the capacity to walk through the shadows and find your way back to the light. Because even after the most devastating storm, we have the power to rebuild, to heal, and to find the courage to live and love again.